Welcome to It's Not What You Think with Mordy Levine, where we get to meet and talk to spiritual teachers from around the world. Our guests are from all walks of life, and we hear about how they got into spirituality, what motivates them to teach and do what they do, and how they navigate the world we all live in. This is episode number 2, recorded on March 24th, 2021. My guest today is Tom Lane. I talk with Tom about how he got into spirituality, his experience with some great teachers, and his trip to circumambulate Mount Kailash in Tibet, and how that changed his life. It's Not What You Think podcast is available on all streaming platforms, so please like, comment, share, or subscribe on your favorite platform. That support is enough to continue to allow us to produce this show. Our interviews are with people who may have opinions different from yours or mine, so while we keep an open mind, just remember, it's not what you think. This week, we are welcoming Tom Lane. Tom Lane has worked in film, web, and publishing. He holds a doctorate in comparative literature from Yale University. I've heard that vaguely sounds familiar. His Buddhist meditation teachers include some of the all-stars in the Buddhist world: Shinzen Young, Ken MacLeod, Joseph Goldstein, Yvonne Rand, Ajahn Pasano from the Thai forest tradition. I don't think they refer to themselves as all-stars, by the way. Tom has edited Ajahn Pasano's book on Metta, Abundant, Exalted, Immeasurable, which appeared last year, or was that several years ago?
It was it was for the 20th anniversary, so it was probably 16.
Yeah, that's what I thought, a few years ago.
Yeah.
I have to talk to my staff. They put last year. This is totally
How dare
unacceptable.
they?
I think on my staff, I have to fire myself, have a meeting and then fire myself. Tom was a member of the first special cohort in Spirit Rock's Community Dharma Leaders Program. He and his wife, Tina, owned and operated a yoga studio in Ventura, California for many years. He lives in Ojai, California. Welcome, Tom, to It's Not What You Think.
Thank you, sir.
How are you?
I'm doing well, thanks.
How was your week, and how did you survive another week in the world of pandemic 2021?
Well, I'm getting my second shot this Friday, so I see some clearing on the horizon. It's encouraging.
It is.
Very encouraging.
Yeah, it's encouraging to see the percentages grow on how many people are getting vaccinated. I mean, I know we have a long way to go, but given the hellish year last year, to see it's actually, like I said, light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah. Friends are saying, "Oh, I've gotten my shots," or "I'm about to get them." So it does seem to be flowing through the population.
Yeah. And then I recently read that someone important from CDC or WHO said that, it's that if everyone had their shots, you can gather without a mask.
Right.
That's a pretty big statement.
So I look forward to that.
Yeah. So, I'm sure years from now, people watching this will have no idea what we're talking about, but that's okay. They'll see people wearing masks in movies and they'll ask, and then they'll figure it out.
I think people will know about the pandemic for some time to come.
That's true. That's true. We've gone through other pandemics over the last few hundred years. So
yeah.
Anyway, so how did you first get into meditation or spiritual practice? How was that?
It's a little complicated, or it's a long story. I actually got converted to Christianity when I was 15 years old in a charismatic, I had a white light experience, and that sort of set me off the path. Then the famous Life magazine article about LSD happened about a year later, and I said, "Oh, you mean you can get this stuff from drugs?" And I grew up in the Bay Area in the 60s, so I had that. That was a good thing to undergo.
It says it all right there.
Yeah. So then I got involved with a school called Agni Yoga, which is more of a Western metaphysical theosophical school, through some friends of mine, and was eventually kicked out. And
as all good Buddhists, we always get kicked out of something.
Exactly.
The Buddhism is the only one that'll have us.
Yeah. So I knew someone who's now passed away, Ralph Metzner, who worked with Leary and Alpert at Harvard, and
right.
he was doing guided sessions, group sessions with psychedelics in Southern California. And it turns out that half of the people who were attending the sessions were into Vipassana. So had worked, I mean, Spirit Rock wasn't yet around, but had worked with Joseph and Sharon at IMS in Massachusetts.
Joseph Goldstein and Sharon Salzberg.
Yes, exactly. I shouldn't abbreviate these things. And one of them said, "Oh, you know, living just and teaching just a few blocks from you in Koreatown in LA is Shensen Young." So he was Tina's and my first Buddhist teacher.
Mm-hmm.
And
so, how were you in your 20s at that point?
Or? Oh God, no. I'm pretty old. I'm 71, actually.
Right. Okay.
So
probably
this was actually in 1990, so
okay,
some age, and worked with him closely for a couple of years, and then got interested, heard about Ken MacLeod, who was a senior Western student of Kala Rinpoche in the Kagyu Tibetan tradition. And he was at the time doing one-on-one, sort of like a therapist, a spiritual therapist, doing one-on-one sessions with people. And I worked with him for like 13 years.
Mm-hmm.
And during that time, I did a 3-month retreat at IMS in Massachusetts, in Psychoeducation Society, and got involved in the Community Dharma Leaders Program, completed that training. And yeah, so I worked with him for 13 years. And then I got involved with Bayagiri Monastery, which is a monastery in the tradition of Ajahn Chah. Mm-hmm. It's a Thai forest monastery that was established in Mendocino County. And Ajahn Pisano, which is the true pronunciation, almost everyone calls him Ajahn Pasano. It was the co-abbot and then the abbot of that monastery. And I did a number of retreats with him and started working with him on his books. I'm actually about to start another one.
Oh, that's fun. Good. Yeah. So do you remember the very first time you quote unquote were close your eyes to meditate?
Boy, that's a long time ago. It was probably around 1970 with my friend John Terrell, who was into this Agni Yoga practice. And
so he's the one that invited you into that group.
Yeah, and he gave me the intro, and so I closed my eyes. And
what did you? I mean, you obviously experienced something or felt something. Otherwise, you wouldn't have, joined them for that many years.
Yeah, well, it involved channeling energy in the form of light, and I guess I must have felt something from that because and I was also looking for,
right.
I was seeking or searching for something to get involved with, and here it was, kind of ready-made for me.
So it's either you found something or you wanted to find something. So that's why, that's why we go in that direction. I didn't quite, that's what happened with me. First time I meditated, it was hard. Nothing happened, but I wanted something to happen. So I went back for more because other people around me were feeling something. They were doing it. So I guess one of the, you're either seeking or you found something, or,
Well, I was seeking and I found something. I don't know if I had a particularly profound experience that first time, but it was a white light meditation, very similar in energy to what I experienced in a Christian context.
Right.
Several years before. So that got me hooked as it were. And I had been really interested in esoterica when I was in high school and college. And so this fed into that. I also thought I knew everything there was to know about Buddhism because I had read a little bit of Alan Watts when I was in high school. I was soon disabused of that once I got into Buddhism. But
Look, until the internet came along, you couldn't possibly know everything there is to know about Buddhism. Now that the internet's here, we do know everything there is to know about Buddhism. So
or we can find out a description
we
of
can get the facts.
it.
It's
Yeah.
on the internet. So,
And the opinions as well.
and the opinions. I'd rather go with the facts, but,
Yeah.
or what people think are facts. So, and I know when we spoke, I guess a week or so ago, that you've had some experience with Kensho as well. Can you talk a little bit about that or share? I know we're not supposed to talk about that, and I'm asking you to talk about that.
Yeah.
But
No, it was about 2/3 of the way through my well, and there were other experiences, but the one that really comes to mind is about 2/3 of the way through the 3-month retreat, and uh, it had just snowed for the first time that winter, and I was sitting in the hall and meditating, and I heard the sound of a snow shovel, and it was just one of those moments that suddenly I felt really expanded, and I was like, it was like I had left my body, but my body was still there, and it was like I got a new perspective on everything from not being quite so tied down to my own personality. And it was actually, really profound. And of course, I immediately went to, oh, I've, you know, just done stream entry and blah, blah, blah. And my interlocutors among the teachers, such as Joseph Goldstein, said, well, maybe not, And of course, they were right. So it's still a little ways off, but
yeah, but when you have those moments, as brief as they may be, or sometimes they're not so brief, it kind of reinforces what's out there, what's available. Not that we want to seek those moments or expand upon those moments. We both know that's not the goal, but it's nice to have a little bit of support in, or I don't want to say confirmation, but oh, okay, that kind of stuff does happen, and and that's my mind or our mind, however you want to look at it. So I think that, and it's fun. You
yeah.
know, when I read about the cities of the great masters, a lot of it is for inspiration for their students. From what
Yeah.
I understand, with relics, great masters leave relics when they're cremated. One of the reasons they do that is just to inspire people that this is possible, to achieve that kind of level.
Mhm.
So I think those are they're important. I think on some level they're important. On some level, of course, they're not important. But it's good to kind of have that along the way a little
Well,
bit.
it's important not to fixate on them, which is
Right.
difficult.
Right.
And actually, I was in a teachers group once, and we were talking about stream entry and so on and so forth. And one of the other people in the group said, well, haven't we all gotten wet? And I thought that was a good way to describe Kensho experience.
Well, as long as you've had it. What about the
Yeah.
people in the group that haven't had it and they're like, okay, I don't know, I haven't had that yet.
Well,
But
I think my first one was actually, I was working with Shinzen, and he was definitely the Buddhist, the Zen aching knee school of Buddhism, and work through the pain, and notice the pain. And I was doing that one afternoon, and suddenly there was a release, and the pain was gone. And again, I felt really expanded. So I suppose that's a mini Kensho. If
I'm going to make a note of that. I'm going to put that on your permanent records that you had that mini. I'm
thank
going to
you.
log that on the internet just to make sure we don't lose track of that experience.
Yeah, exactly.
I've had other teachers who definitely had city powers, But I realized, and it took me a long time to realize that that's great and everything. But if they don't have the other side of the coin, which is the compassion, I want to help others relieve suffering, then what's the big deal? Then who cares? Those are not, and I learned pretty quickly that's not, maybe not so quickly, those are not the people I want to follow. It's great. Hey, great meditator. Hey, Kensho. Hey, they levitate. Hey, you can, they can fly. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. But if they don't have that compassionate side of them, then they could just be a sharpshooter out there killing people, but doing a really great job because they're so focused and they can, concentrate well.
Yeah, well, in the Mahayana, of course, the two wings of the Dharma are wisdom and compassion, and there are
Right.
certain people who are really advanced wisdom naturals who haven't quite cultivated the compassion.
Yeah, that's a good point. And from what I've read, because I don't have that experience, when someone does understand that level of emptiness, that level of wisdom, I would have thought the compassion comes naturally, that it is truly the other side of the coin. Because if I see that everything's interconnected, integrated, or what Thich Nhat Hanh says, interbeing, and I truly can feel that, then when I see you suffering, I feel suffering. It's just a natural extension of wisdom, but apparently not.
Well, I used to feel that people who are intelligent would naturally be compassionate, which of course is very far from being the case.
No, you're saying
So,
the same thing. You're saying the
yeah,
same thing.
right, right.
So I stand corrected, unfortunately, but it's good to know not to make that mistake. From speaking for myself.
Yeah, I mean, I've gone into various parts of my practice specifically wanting sort of that, although I've done a little bit of Zen, not a whole lot, mainly with Yvonne Rand, who's a compassion natural, or was. She recently passed away, but uh, yeah, I mean, I went into certain relationships specifically wanting the Stern Zen master archetype because that was going to force me to um, go further faster, which I ultimately decided wasn't the point. Not that these people weren't excellent teachers; they were.
Yeah.
But a lot of it has to do with the chitta, the heart mind, and cultivating that and allowing it to grow and also to shed the kleshas.
It just occurred to me, I think in the West, it's easier for us to, I think both concepts are difficult, emptiness and compassion, just as a Westerner. But I think if one is going to be easier, it's easier for me to buy into the emptiness, impermanence, because you kind of like, yeah, that makes sense logically. To start walking around and trying to treat other people, not just sentient beings, because animals, it's easy to have compassion for them because they don't piss you off, but to be compassionate about other beings or put them first, that's, I think, very difficult for Westerners. It's not in our culture. Our culture is started, 16, 1700s, fighting the Indians and Western cowboys and out there individualism and tough guys and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And so I just feel it's easier for us to find and understand, at least logically, the wisdom and the emptiness before compassion. Sometimes compassion gets left behind. That's what
Yeah.
my
And
theory.
that training is obviously still all too obviously very much with us. And I think I mean, speaking personally, there's a lot of anger going on.
Oh,
And,
now for sure. Yeah.
anything I can do to reduce my level of anger is good.
Yeah.
It's well, I'm admitting it, but it's a little difficult to admit because you want to be on a higher plane, but that's not really how this works at least in my experience.
Yeah, I agree. I think obviously the last few years there's even more and more anger in our society, but you can go back 30, 40, 50 years and there's all back to the 60s and there's anger, anger, anger. So now here's my second theory, which you can feel free to publish this if you want. I get royalties on it,
Oh,
is
okay.
that in the West, we just have a lot of anger. We came here out of anger. We were pissed off at the king and the queen of England. And then we brought in all these slaves. They weren't like walking around happy. So they were angry and we were enslaving them. How happy can you be that way? So, you kind of look at our culture and our society and how it developed. And, it's like, we weren't really Mr. and Mrs. Compassionate for hundreds and hundreds of years. So to think that all of a sudden that now that we benefit from the Eastern approach, the last, 30, 40 years, that we're just going to lose that cultural generational anger. We were taught to be, this is mine and that's yours. Yeah. I earned this and you didn't. So where's the compassion there? And then of course, you bring TV into the game 50, 60 years ago where, you can get a washing machine. Oh, I don't have to do that by hand. Dishwasher. Oh, look at all the things I could buy. Buy. Me. So the odds, frankly, in my mind, I'm not a pessimist, but it's going to sound pessimistic, are just against us.
Uh-huh. Well, it is, it's that paradox of it takes work to develop it. And then,
I didn't mean to get you depressed, Tom.
No.
I didn't say it was impossible. I said it was hard.
Okay. I'll have to think about that.
Okay. I'll bring you back in 6 months and you'll.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. No, it's difficult.
Yeah.
The momentum is against us and we have to do, like you said, it's work. It's a lot of hard work and it's all in the mind and therefore in the body. So, but there's a reason why for most of us, it's really, really hard work. And then we look at the culture of the Tibetan Buddhists who have a lot of kindness, and even, I don't want to talk about Japan so much, but, it's a lot of it's cultural,
There is that. There's definitely that. And the pros and cons of adapting Buddhism to the West, which must happen if, it is to spread here, and it has been happening. And there are a lot of missteps that we've taken individually and as practitioners, as someone interested in developing these virtues and seeing them develop more fully in the others around us. And but it's trial and error, I think, really.
Yeah, it's reminiscent of, I don't know the exact prayer, but and I know they say it in a lot of the Zen groups, the beings are numberless, but I'm going to keep going. And that's kind of what it feels like to me. The beings are
Bodhisattva vow.
Yeah, the Bodhisattva vow, exactly. It's like, okay, is it going to happen tomorrow? No. Is it going to happen in a year, 10,000 years after that? Maybe never, but I'm going to keep going until every one of them is enlightened.
Well, in a retreat with Ken McLeod, I did take the Bodhisattva vow, and I don't know. I occasionally feel like a Bodhisattva, but I don't know. Do I take the vow seriously enough? I wonder about that. And then, okay, is that just neurotic, wondering or worrying about that? It's the practice really gets you where you live, and that's one of the places I live.
Yeah, I think also we have very goal orientation.
Yes.
And your goal orientation is like, okay, I'm going to get 3 people enlightened and then I'm good. It's like, but that, okay, well, just give me the number.
If I'm trying to do it for myself.
Just whatever. Okay, 7 billion. And then the answer is no, it's not 7 billion. It's innumerable.
Everything, yeah. Right.
How do I set that goal?
Well, so it's impossible, and then it's
Exactly.
possible. Like it's a lot of work, and then um, no work. I
Yeah.
mean, I
It,
don't
it,
want you to do anything.
it's process oriented versus goal oriented.
Yeah,
Goal, and which of course I'm trying to train myself is, yeah, you have to have certain goals, going to get out of bed in the morning, got to pay the rent and all that kind of stuff. But it's really, Buddhism's really process oriented, which is what am I, what am I doing now? Am I in the present moment now? Not, okay, how many more beings are there to, to help along the way. So I think when you're process oriented, you don't get caught up in, oh, I'm never going to make that goal. Um,
right.
anyways, okay. I didn't
Well, I
mean
mean, just one comment about
I
that
didn't
was
mean to bring the conversation down. I'm going to bring it back up in a second.
no. I mean, one, I did a long retreat, a Dzogchen retreat with Ken McLeod, and
Okay.
the instruction for the first week was do nothing. And that was interesting. And at one point, Ken said, well, I didn't mean for you to do nothing. I meant for you to do nothing. Whatever. So I guess it's a subtle distinction that I tried to follow.
Yeah, and that's something you can only do really on retreat because, good luck doing that in your house where there's so much that needs to be done, even if it
Right.
doesn't really need to be done. But
Yeah.
good instruction. So I know that not long ago you visited Tibet,
Yeah.
and I think one of your goals. One of your goals, did I say that loud enough? Was to circumambulate Mount Kailash, which is
Right.
obviously a major religious location for Buddhists, for Jains, for Hindus, and I think also for Bon practitioners.
Right.
I believe it's 32 miles around the base, so it's not a trivial matter. And I think some of them are prostrating around the base. So, what motivated you to go? Why did it one day? Hey, got to
Well, I
go.
mean, decades ago, I read Lama Govinda's Way of the White Clouds, which I recommend to everyone. It's one of the kind of supreme books on spirituality, and he talks about his pilgrimage to Mount Kailash and doing the circumambulation. And I gave the book to friends who later came with me on this trip, and but it took 20. It would have been better if I had done it 20 years before, because I would
All
have
right.
been younger. But that was the original inspiration.
Are they prostrating or are they just walking or either one's okay?
That's like you've got to be really hardcore to do that. And the highest pass is over 18,000 feet. It's called the Tara Pass, and you know, to prostrate around the whole thing is you've got to really be,
Brutal.
yeah, that's brutal.
Right. So yeah, no, I know a lot of Tibetans, not personally, but from the movies, because that's where I get all my spirituality from.
I see.
Prostrate to, Potala Palace or to various cities, depending on, and you see them on the street, on the road, on the highway, miles and miles and miles. So people do it. And then once they stop, they feel, years later, yeah, I got to do that again. So,
Right. It's
so
never been a practice that's especially appealed to me.
yeah,
Although in Nundro, you're supposed to do 100,000 prostrations over
correct. Right.
the course of years or months or
Yes.
but I haven't done that. So the trip didn't turn out
Yes. Tell us about it.
planned. Um, we went to Kathmandu, and then there was a group of about 10 people, Americans and Germans. The leader is Swiss German, but has lived in Kathmandu for quite some time, and got up to Tibet and to Lhasa to begin with, which is 12,000 feet. And I had never had any problem with altitude sickness. I just felt horrible. So to make a long story short, it turns out I had contracted a very virulent form of bacterial pneumonia. So I was,
How did you find that? How long did it take you to find that out?
well, I
Well,
was evacuated to Kathmandu, and
so you were in bad shape if they evacuated you.
yes, and it was one of my, I mean, talk about being unable to climb up to 18,000 feet. I mean, I was getting winded going over bridges in Lhasa, and one of my close friends gave up the trip and came with me, and I was in hospital in ICU in Kathmandu for a week, and then things were getting a little too complicated, and I managed to get transferred to this wonderful hospital in Bangkok, and I was there for a couple of weeks.
How do you get transferred? Do you just go on a commercial flight?
No, I was really lucky I had good insurance because it was a private flight from,
Wow.
a medical flight, a special
Yeah. So
thing.
travel insurance actually does something.
And yes, I was so glad that I got it because, boy, we'd be broke if,
Yeah.
if we
So
had.
it must be a flight and not a helicopter. So
It was a flight. Yeah, it's a 3-hour flight. I mean, the insurance at first wanted to send me to New Delhi, and my friend said, which is only an hour from Kathmandu by
yeah, yeah.
and my friend said, Tom, you're not going to get to New Delhi. It's a very tough town. And I decided to either stay there or hold out for Bangkok. And my wife just did a wonderful job of convincing the insurance to
Take you to Bangkok.
take me to Bangkok.
Was it that Bangkok was so much more superior medically than New Delhi? I'm not familiar with either.
Yeah,
Or
no,
I guess that was
I
the
think there's that, and there's a lot of medical tourism in Thailand for a very
okay.
good reason. And I mean, by coincidence or whatever you want to call it, serendipity, this hospital, the doctors and other staff in the hospital are big supporters of Ajahn Pasano's monastery in Mendocino. And the reason for that is Ajahn Pasano is really well known in Thailand. And he goes there every year, or to do a fundraising, and they bring.
So wait, so you're in bed, you're in ICU, or I don't know if you're in ICU, but you're in a hospital bed there.
I
And
was, yeah.
how did it become known to you that, oh, these people are supporters of Ajahn Pasano?
Yeah, so I mean, my wife called Ajahn
Oh, okay.
Pisano, and he said, "Oh yeah, it's a really good restaurant. It's really good. I wish hospital," and so on and so forth. And then this whole story came out, and I went,
Perfect.
"Wow!" And the people were so nice. I mean, the level of care is really high there, and part of it is cultural, frankly.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Uh, and I didn't feel there were any problems with the facilities. I was at a small travel hospital in Kathmandu where
Mhm.
uh, the staff was marvelous. The facilities left a little something to be desired, which is why I went
Right.
to
Mhm.
Bangkok.
So how long were you there for? How long before then after that, I assume at some point you went home.
Yeah, it was 3 weeks total in hospital, 2 weeks in ICU, and I got home and I thought, okay, well, this is over, but it wasn't. I really had a very long recovery period with intense, like a year of really clinical depression.
Really?
Yeah, I've managed to climb out of with a lot of help in the last.
So what would you say triggered that? And I don't know if the word triggered is the right word, but was it, oh, gee, I didn't get to circumambulate, around Mount
No,
Kailash,
that wasn't it. I think that, well, I mean, to be really honest, which I assume you want me to be, is I think I had done a spiritual bypass, as they call it, of
Hmm.
some of my psychological issues, which hadn't really been dealt with adequately. I had been repressing, suppressing, whatever you want to call it. So that's what happened. I had a crash.
So that trip, and when you came back, somehow, I guess that is the right word, triggered or forced the issue that
Yes.
you were able not to have to deal with. And now, hey, you were dealing with it.
Right, exactly.
So from that perspective, I look at that trip as a huge success, even though it doesn't feel that way.
Well, that's what, a lot of people say. And I mean,
Doesn't feel that way,
especially,
but it's kind of true. Otherwise, you could be suppressing and bypassing the rest of your life. At
yeah,
some point,
that's
it
true.
catches up, I would think.
Yeah, like when you're on, you know, when you're in hospice or something. So, I mean, part of it is, okay, well, having gone through this, and, I'm still working, obviously. I've got an excellent therapist who also teaches meditation, but, you know, I mean, working on this has been invaluable, and not something I really did in my spiritual practice before.
Right.
Uh, yeah.
Good.
So
Well, I mean, you sound great. You look great. Not that I know it. I'm not a medical person, but I'm glad that you're potentially on your way out of the other side, so to speak.
oh yeah, no, I feel I'm on the other side, but now there's a whole new landscape, and I'm dealing with it partly through meditation and partly through therapy and partly through
Great.
medication and meditation, and so on and so forth, and am, let's say, less, well, yeah, less likely to judge myself for having to be on medication and all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Meditation does it all.
Well,
The be all and end all to all.
right. Well, that was the American way, right? To look and put something up on a pedestal like meditation. And meditation is the be all and end all. And we can solve all problems. And the fact of the matter is that's just not the case, that there's a lot of tools out there. And I've seen a change, really a shift in the last, I'd say 5, maybe 10 years, where even hardcore Eastern Buddhists recognize and understand that you really do need both. And I think part of that's also cultural, because I know when the Dalai Lama first met the West, he didn't understand this concept of either, I think, depression and also like maybe self-hatred. He just didn't, it's like,
What is this?
someone had to explain it to him and it didn't quite get it. I guess maybe, and this part I don't know until maybe he had interacted with a number of people and understood it. So if you don't understand the culture, then you're not going to understand the solution.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, the story I've always heard is he came to the realization that people really felt this way, and
oh, okay.
Started crying. I mean, the compassion side came up, which is, of course, probably more. I mean, you think of compassion when you think of the Dalai Lama.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, when you look at from a karmic perspective, you're doing your thing to take care of whatever needs to be taken care of. And that to me is incredibly courageous, incredibly brave, not easy, but you're doing it. And like you said, or maybe I said, the other choice was, I'm just going to keep bypassing until I'll push it off into the next lifetime.
Right.
But, or until you're about to die. And that's when you see people really see how they live their life, because how they die is how they live their life. And if they're angry, frustrated, things aren't working the way they want them to, they're grasping, then, gee, they weren't able to, they were spiritual bypassing. So I applaud the fact that you're able to do that. And from that regard, I look at the trip as just phenomenal that it allowed you to do that. Now, I know you don't look at
It was phenomenal, right?
Yeah, not quite the way I meant it, but yeah.
It was a pilgrimage.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So good for you. Yeah. If we take goal orientation out of it, it was a tremendous success. And who
Okay.
cares about goal oriented crap anyways? So let's talk about your day to day off the cushion practice. What do you do if 2 hours from now, all of a sudden you're stressed about something or something went wrong or didn't meet your expectations? What do you have, like a technique or a go-to that you do for yourself when that?
Yeah, it's simple mindfulness. I mean, is the first technique. Okay, feel the feelings, become aware of what's going on. Where is it in the body? It's not necessarily a step-by-step procedure, but I'm going, oh, okay, I feel terrible or whatever, and what's going on. Just coming to a realization about it. Um, and actually, I mean, one thing that's really been good about this difficult experience is I'm feeling a lot less angry for some reason, and not reacting. I mean, even just within myself, um, so much with anger. So that's been great. It's of course, I sit every day, and um, unfortunately, well, I wasn't really in a space where I could do online retreats. Now I'm feeling more open to it, and actually, the book uh, the book I'm about to edit is Ajahn Pasano's. It's a series of 19 Dharma talks, which he did during a 3-month retreat at the monastery on Anapanasati and the 16 stages or steps of
Mhm.
doing meditation on the in breath and out breath. So I think that's going to be my next training or
Mhm.
teaching.
Beautiful.
Yeah, no, it's like, and when I was first asked to do it, I couldn't do it. I just, I was actually on disability, and
Mhm.
um, then when I started feeling better, I um, called them up and I said, "Is that still available?" And they basically said it still was. They hadn't really found anyone, so I said, "I'll do it."
Beautiful. Very, 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 I don't want to say lucky for lack of a better word, but that's phenomenal. You mentioned reduction in anger, and it's such a, as a result of your experience or, hopefully coming through it, not that we're ever always already all the way through it, but sometimes the anger is just like, it's for me, if I get angry about something, yeah, I do the mindfulness thing and, of course, and all that stuff. Absolutely. And it works. Sometimes works a little, sometimes works a lot, but we want to hold on to that anger. That's my anger. I'm right about that.
Mhm.
That, yeah, I'm going to be angry because I'm right.
Yes, exactly.
And
That's how I always feel.
do I really want to be doing that mindful? No, it's like, so it's almost this, I don't know if it's a tug of war, but it's kind of a little bit like a debate on who's good, do I want to do the mindfulness so that I can kind of just feel what I'm doing and observe and breathe and observe and breathe and all that stuff? Or do I want to hold on to that anger because that's my anger and I'm right? And it's just very powerful. And I don't know if the word is probably, I don't know if the word is addictive, but it's certainly habituated.
Yeah, yeah,
So your experience, and sorry, and because of that grasping to the anger, your experience has, I think, allowed you to release the grasping.
yeah. To a certain extent. I mean,
Yeah,
more than I was able to do
yeah.
before or did do. I mean, one of my favorite, talking about I'm right and all of that, and also the earlier thing we were talking about with truth versus opinion. One of my favorite Buddhist quotations is from the third Zen patriarch who said, "Do not seek truth, only cease to value opinion." only cease to cherish opinion. That's better. I mean, I don't know what it was in Chinese.
Right. Right. Cherish or value.
That's a better translation.
Yeah.
That's the truth. Only cease to cherish opinion.
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry about the crowd in the background there. I'm sure she'll stop barking in about 2 hours.
Okay, good. Good. Oh, and then there's one other thing you asked me about the cushion. Sometimes, occasionally, when I do mindfulness, then it is a release, and I'm able to release a bit of that ego thing, and suddenly a perspective changes where there's more fluidity between me and the outside world. And I realize more fully that, my perceptions are partially opinions. And it's not necessarily, well, it's certainly not the full truth of what's happening. So kind of releasing some of that, even sensation and perception.
Yeah, I think in your case, because you had that illness and because it was attached, no pun intended, to something that was very important to you. I'm going to Mount Kailash. I'm going to go circumambulate. I'm going to do this, so we're so tied to our identity, so tied to grasping and supporting it and all that other stuff, the anger, or throw whatever you want into that basket. But then you have this illness and you don't have the energy. You don't have the energy to grasp anymore.
Yeah.
And not only that, but it's a shock because that was not supposed to happen. What was supposed to happen is you're going to go and circumambulate and come back enlightened. And what ended up happening
or whatever.
And what happens, you're in a hospital and then they fly over there and then you're almost dead and they fly, It's like, okay, where's my identity in all this? Where to go? Yeah. And guess what, Tom? There was no identity to begin with. They didn't tell you that. Yeah. So it makes total sense to me from my tiny little brain, and to focus on the positive, which is true. Is I think you're feeling. It sounds to me, you look like you're feeling better the way you're talking. We have more compassion for ourselves.
That I've had to develop. And compassion certainly for my wife, who was just great the whole time. And
beautiful. So happy about that.
Yeah.
So the Dalai Lama, as you know, was supposed to join us today for this podcast.
Oh, yeah. I was looking forward to that.
Couldn't make it. So put you on the spot. So if you had one question or comment for the Dalai Lama, what would it be?
Oh boy.
Question or comment?
That's a comment. No, I wouldn't dare give a comment. It would have to be a question.
Okay.
And the question would be, what's one practice I could do to increase my compassion?
I'd love to hear his answer. And what's nice about that is that's a very practical, for me, that's a practical question. I love practical stuff. Theories are great and hypotheses are great and all that stuff, but just give me something that works.
Right. I mean, and I assume it would be kind of then a bit of a transmission, which I do.
Yeah.
And I think I've experienced it too. People who have really worked on themselves so diligently. I mean, for me, that will have to be another lifetime, but if there is such a thing. But certain people are genuinely admirable, and obviously he's one of them. He's sort of the archetype of the admirable Buddhist teacher. So it'd be, well, I mean, I did once attend a lecture by him at Royce Hall in UCLA, and that was very powerful.
Yeah, I've seen him a few times at these, in these big halls, and every time I see him, he comes out and there's this big wave of, lack of a better word, love, compassion that hits the audience. People are, myself, the tears,
Right.
So there's obviously something going on there. And it's I think he's the archetype. We're lucky that he's here showing us what we can be.
Yeah, I mean, he's really transmuted suffering, and having had some experience of that recently, it's I guess that's what it's all about, the truth of suffering, or dukkha, and the truth of the end of suffering.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, Tom. So this has been wonderful. It's been a pure joy.
Thank you for inviting me
to meet you. Thank you for sharing your experience with us. I'm happy that you are feeling good, and look forward to staying in touch with you.
Likewise.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Stay safe.
Okay.
Take care. I hope you enjoyed our talk with Tom Lane. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe to the It's Not What You Think podcast. That really helps us to continue to produce these episodes and invite other guests from around the world. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, or would like to hear any specific guests on the podcast, please share my email, mordylevine@gmail.com, or visit mordylevine.com. Remember, it's not what you think.